Welcome to the Libido Lounge, where we focus on all things love, lust, and libido. We believe that fabulous sex is important to health as exercise and good food. Okay, everybody, we're getting into a juicy topic today. We're talking about anal sex as a way of bringing novelty into long-term relationships. So, anal is a zone that a lot of people are trepidatious about exploring, and there's so many nerve endings, and there can be so much pleasure in this part of the body. And it's a great way of just mixing it up. It's a great way of adding novelty. It's a great way of adding pleasure. And so how do you begin to do this in relationships? So first of all, talk about it outside of the bedroom. Talk about it, the level of interest. Talk about it in a male-female hetero relationship. Talk about what it's like for both people to experience anal. I've seen so many couples where the male is very trepidatious about exploring, about having any sort of anal penetration himself. Wherever you are at in this whole conversation, I just hope you keep an open mind. And sometimes a little bit of play there can be a lot of pleasure. So regardless, from a female perspective or a male perspective, there's a few things to know. So the first is, if you're worried about any sort of grossness about that area, I would definitely always encourage you, whether or not you're worried about it, to do anal play after bathing. Get everything nice and clean. Really make sure that you've had a bowel movement that day. You can also get something called an enema bulb, an anal enema bulb. And this is just a little bulb where it has a stem on it, and the stem acts as almost like a little speculum. You can put a little bit of lube on the speculum, insert it anally, and there's water in the bulb. And that will basically, then you just kind of squeeze the bulb, that flushes the water up into the rectum, and that will get, if there's any other stool, there's anything left over, that will get that out. So from a standpoint then, once we've taken cleanliness, into consideration, then the next thing I would encourage you to do is just have a session where you're just playing with like that outer tissue. Get some lube. A good silicone-based lube is really what's recommended for anal sex. I'm a huge fan of Uber Lube. I will put a link to my shop to get this Uber Lube in the show notes. And essentially with that, the silicone is going to be much more viscous than a water-based lube. It's also really important to do this particular play with somebody that is STI free, or that you are, open to taking that risk essentially with, because you're not going to want to use condoms for anal play, because if a condom comes off and gets stuck up there, you're probably going to the hospital. So this tends to be more of a condom-free zone. And so making sure that you're doing this from a safe sex perspective, testing partners, or doing this in combination of a long-term monogamous relationship. I tend to work with people in long-term monogamous relationships where the STI thing is not so much of a concern, right? But the initial thing to really try oftentimes is just a little bit of lube, silicone lube, and just play with the outer tissue, and then just talk about it. Talk about it afterwards. What did you like? What did you not? If that feels good, then you can explore with just a little tiny pinky inserted. And you can slowly, that's usually the way to work into this, is slowly working your way up from, say, small digits to bigger digits, and just communicating about it every time. This is a huge area of a lot of communication. Usually once you go for like full penile penetration into the anus, usually from that standpoint, you want a lot of lube, you want to be really warmed up, you want to be gentle, but usually there's like an initial slight slide that needs to happen to get the head of the penis into the rectal canal. And then once that happens, as long as there's enough lube, this can feel incredibly pleasurable. So this is a very different way of playing, I know, for a lot of people, but I'm really working to help you guys have so many different options on novelty, right? There's so many different ways of creating more unique combinations of pleasure and enjoyment and hotness and sexiness in long-term relationships. And the biggest thing is just having some sort of system for not getting in the rut. Think about the top ones we've talked about: position, people, things, places, right? These are the ideas, right? And with people, I'm not saying that you're bringing another party in. Some people do that, but what I'm more suggesting there is like role playing, right? Having fun with that. So we've talked about a lot of this throughout the channel, and I would encourage you at a minimum, if you can, at an absolute minimum, have once a month, switch it up night, where it's like, okay, once a month, there's a dedicated night to, we're going to actively put effort into trying something new. If you can do that once a week, even better, but at least once a month, some sort of hot, sexy, new, try something new, do research, have a plan, flirt about it in advance. It can do wonders for waking up that dopamine and desire zone. And when you talk about it, beforehand and you talk about it afterwards, what I find is like, even if it wasn't the most pleasurable thing, and even if you're like, hey, I tried that thing and I don't think I want to do it again. What that allows is that closeness of connection, of communication, of openness around something vulnerable and being received and talking through, okay, well, what is pleasurable? What was not pleasurable? What could we change, right? So that level of intimate conversation can also be really hot and sexy and really help in those long-term relationships. So please drop your comments in the show notes. Share this with your friends. Don't keep me a secret. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.